pink tie, civilian pants. He is wearing shackles and jail shoes. His feet are underneath the table, so they can't be seen by the jury from any angle in the courtroom. I need to see the court reporter and Mr. Lenneman at sidebar for an in-camera proceeding real quickly, please. Thanks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I need to conduct an in-camera proceeding with the defense, so I need to clear the courtroom, and the media needs to shut their camera off, shut off the news feed, and everyone needs to stay. You ready to go?
If I can, how I plan on proceeding with the PowerPoint. We obviously would introduce the exhibit. Once it's introduced, I'll ask to publish, or one of us will ask to publish using the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Have a slide with the witness's name that's going to be testifying, which when the witness is called, I'll put that slide up. And I won't obviously advance until the next slide, until the exhibit that is depicting is introduced into evidence.
Okay, no issues. Any objections from defense?
I'm sorry.
Okay, you gotta listen when he's talking. Go ahead.
The PowerPoint, I have a slide with the witness's name. Once we call the witness will show up and on this next slide. And then once the exhibit is introduced into evidence and accepted by the court, I will then publish using the PowerPoint. Okay. I don't know if the court controls the sound. I tested earlier and we had no sound.
All right, let's bring the jury in. Please remain seated when the jury's coming in and out. State recognized presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes.
All right, welcome back, folks. Hope you all had a good evening. Ready to get started with the trial. State, you may begin your opening.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please, the court, counsel. 6031 Long Peak Drive in Orlando is a two-story house. Standing in the roadway facing it, to the right, there's a driveway and a two-car garage. In the center is a doorway, windows on either side. In front of the front door, there's a small concrete pad porch with columns on each corner. And there's a concrete walkway that curves around from there to the driveway. On December 13th of 2016, there were 7 occupants at the house. There was Ron Daniels, who was the father, husband, Stephanie Dixon Daniels, the mother and wife, their 19-year-old son, Dominique Daniels, Miss Dixon Daniels' daughter from a prior marriage, Sade Dixon, and her son from a prior marriage, Ronald Stewart Jr. Also, Sade Dixon's 2 young children live there. In the weeks preceding December 13th, Sade had stayed at the house sometimes, and sometimes she stayed at the house of her boyfriend, the defendant in this case, Markeith Loyd. On the Saturday before the 16th, which was a Tuesday, Sade Dixon came back home and brought all of her belongings home with her and stayed at the house. On the 13th, Ron Daniels had gone to work and come back home. Ms. Dixon Daniels had gone to work and come back home. Ronald Stewart was home working from a home office that sat just inside the front door with a window that looked out into the front yard. Sade Dixon was there along with the children. Dominique was off playing basketball with some friends. Sometime in the evening, there was a knock on the door, and Ron Stewart went and answered the door, and it was the defendant who asked for Sade. He got her, told her that the defendant was outside. She went outside with him. Sometime later, Dominique came home from playing basketball and walked through the yard, saw the 2 of them there, and he went into the house. At some point during this time, this evening, Sade Dixon came into the house, went up to her room, and out of her closet got a lockbox used her key to open it, and took out a Smith & Wesson 9mm semi-automatic pistol that had been given to her as a gift. She took it downstairs and went back outside. Sometime after that, the defendant took the gun away from her. As they were outside and Ronald Stewart was sitting at his desk working, he heard a bang on the metal garage door. He thought at first that it was his dog, which sometimes was kept in the garage. So he got up, went through the house to the passageway door into the back of the garage, and looked in. And through some small windows along the carport door, the garage door, he saw his sister and the defendant. She was standing on one side of a car. He was standing on the other. He went back through the house and went out the front door. And when he got there, they were still in that position. He walked down the curved driveway to the sidewalk to the driveway. And after a brief exchange, said, y'all just need to stop. Y'all need to pick this up, take it up another day. At that point, he and Sade turned to go back into the house. Sade ran up to the door, but because the knob was set inside, the door was locked. Ronald came and joined her on the porch. The defendant, who had moved to the end of the driveway, then came up and stood just off of the concrete walkway in the yard. He reached into the hand warmer part of his jacket, fumbled, pulled out a Smith & Wesson .40 caliber semi-automatic pistol that he had brought with him. He said, "Nah, she ain't going away. She's not going with you." She cocked the gun, he pointed it, and he fired. The first round hit Ronald Stewart in the abdomen, and he fell to the ground there on the porch between the pillar and the house. The defendant then approached the porch, firing. He hit Sade Dixon several times. She fell down. He came up onto the porch, turned. Ronald Stewart was laying on his back. He walked over, stood over Ronald, shot him a couple more times, left, and just walked out to his car. Inside the house, Ms. Dixon Daniels and Dominique heard the shots and came running downstairs. And when they opened the door, there was the defendant running away toward his car. He turned, raised the gun, and pointed it at the door. Dominique grabbed his mother's arm, yanked her back inside, slammed the door, heard a couple more shots, then heard the car drive off. And he opened the door. Ms. Dixon Daniels started doing CPR on her daughter. Other family members started tending Ronald. The sheriff's department was called. They moved each of the two victims out into the grass to have better access to them. Sade Dixon was pronounced dead on the scene, and she was 3 months pregnant at the time. Ronald Stewart was transported to the hospital, where he spent a month, underwent multiple surgeries, but ultimately survived. The sheriff's office crime scene unit came to the house. And this is what they found. This was the body of Sade Dixon, where she had been moved by other members of the sheriff's office so that they could better treat her. Right here was Sade Dixon's 9mm. Right here was the clothing that the paramedics had cut off Ronald Stewart to treat him better. Right here, here, probably read it better if I turned it right side up, right? Here, 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 here. There was a total of 11 .40 caliber casings that had been ejected from the firearm. Among that 11 were 2 found out in the street. The scene was processed, the evidence was collected, the investigation conducted. About a month later, on January the 9th, a lady named Dixon Bryant went to the Walmart on Princeton just off John Young.
Objection, pretrial motion.
Oh, good.
Keisha Bryant went to the Walmart on Princeton just off John Young to buy a jacket for her daughter. It was a cold morning. She got there sometime before 7 o'clock. She went into this Walmart, found the jacket, went up to aisle 2, the cashier, to pay. But there was no cashier there. So she walked over to the service desk to tell them that they needed a cashier. So the cashier came with her and they walked back to aisle 2 so Miss Bryant could check out. Someone has come into the line behind her and she turned to explain to the person that she wasn't really cutting in line, she'd been there first. When she did, she recognized the person who was standing behind her, who was Markeith Loyd. She knew the defendant, although she had never met him personally. She knew of him because he was married to her cousin, and she had seen Facebook pictures and videos and recognized him. She was also aware that the police were looking for Markeith Loyd for the murder of Sade Dixon. Coincidentally, as they're there in the process of checking out, Orlando Police Sergeant Deborah Clayton, who was in the store buying some items, walked by on her way out of the store in uniform. Ms. Bryant recognized that this was a police officer. As soon as she finished purchasing her items, she went to out the front door, saw where Sergeant Clayton was parked down at the end of the sidewalk, and ran down to where Sergeant Clayton was and told her there's a man inside named Markeith. He's wanted for the shooting of his pregnant girlfriend. Sergeant Clayton walked back towards the entrance and arrived at the entrance about the time Markeith Loyd was walking out. She told Markeith Loyd to get on the ground.
Objection, pretrial motion.
Overruled.
The defendant broke to the left and ran around a pillar that was standing there. Came out on the other side with a firearm. There was an exchange of gunfire between him and Sergeant Clayton. After the gunfire, the defendant ran across the parking lot, got in his car, and drove away. The police arrived and processed the scene in the driveway in the front of the Walmart. They found 8 .40 caliber casings. A little over a week later, police located the defendant in a house on Westcott Lane in Orlando. After surrounding the house, told him to come out. Opened the front door and he threw something out. Then he came out and crawled away from the house. Police officers moved in, searched the house to make sure that there was no one else there, and they found the item that had been thrown out. It was a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson semi-automatic handgun. That gun was sent to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Crime Lab, where it was examined and compared to the 11 shell casings found in front of 6031 Long Peak Drive. They determined they all had been fired from that gun. The 8 shell casings that had been found in front of the Walmart were compared to that gun that was found on Lescott Lane. And the lab determined that that firearm that the defendant had thrown out fired all 8 of those shell casings. The evidence in this case is going to show you Markeith Loyd determined to kill Sade Dixon, that he did kill her and her unborn child, that he attempted to kill Ronald Stewart, attempted to kill Dominique Daniels, attempted to kill Stephanie Dixon Daniels, and that he's guilty of the charges against him. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Ridgway.